Ladies and gentlemen, brothers and sisters, friends, enemies, and comrades, I hope you're doing well wherever you are. This is Kenya Revolutionary for another session. I'll be here for an hour maximum, or maybe less, or maybe more, just depends on how this goes. But I really want to touch on a few things that I feel like we need to talk about because Kenya is heading in not so good place, okay? So we have to talk about these things, okay? We have to discuss these things. Ama namna gani? Okay, karibuni sana, karibuni sana. I'll give you a few minutes, ladies and gentlemen. If this is your first time coming in here, I talk about Kenyan politics and world politics as it relates to Kenya. So if you like that kind of stuff, please join in. Make sure you subscribe, share, like, comment, do all the good stuff, and put that notification bell on so every time I come in, you can always find me here. I'm Namnagani. All right, if you're already subscribed, you know the first order of business is to do what? Hit that like button. So let's get to the topic. My topic today is basically Rigathi Gachagua, William Ruto, Raila Odinga, Uhuru Kenyatta, and Matiangi, and among and others, all these political lunatics that are positioning themselves as our leaders, so-called leaders, or political head of political parties and stuff, the people with the influence who are influencing the politics of the day in Kenya, the day-to-day one. These people are not going to lead us in a good place, okay? They're not. They are not going to lead us in a good place. And I'll tell you why, okay? I'll tell you why these people are not doing that. Now, I want to start with the recent pronouncements by the DP while he was in US. Former DP, let me just say that, okay, Rigathi Gachagua. And what he said was startling for somebody of his position, okay, so-called position. I think he was somewhere in Boston, where he basically said that the Kenyan economy is controlled by the Kikuyu tribe, and that if the Kikuyu tribe do not exist, the Kenyan economy cannot grow. So, again, this guy, like I've always mentioned here before, that this guy is the control opposition. He's the pretender. He's pretending to be opposing Ruto's regime, and is playing a particular part. He's playing this position as the mouthpiece of the Kikuyu nation, the Mount Kenya region, okay, the Mrima, okay, trying to be their mouthpiece, and basically fostering and encouraging this political tension, having this siege mentality. Oh, we Kikuyus are under attack by William Samoei Ruto's regime, okay? And he's really making it worse for Kikuyus, to be exact, because he shares some sentiments that maybe it will be best if he kept to himself, okay? Shimariam Karibu, I see you, and everybody else who's joining, please make sure you like, share, subscribe, and do all the good stuff, and put the notification on if you haven't already. Okay, so what I'm saying is this: while majority, some of the Kikuyus who actually are a fan of this lunatic Rigathi Gachagua might be clapping and are applauding him for his rather brazen talk, not calculated. Well, it's calculated, but it's a very brazen way of addressing Kenyans. It's not the best thing or in the interest of the Kikuyu people to say what he said, because what he does is actually alienate the Kikuyu people from others, because the more people see, okay, other Kenyans see that Kikuyus are actually welcoming Rigathi Gachagua as their mouthpiece, as their leader, as their so-called de facto Mudamaki, the more they shall start associating these unfortunate pronouncements by Rigathi Gachagua with the official position that he takes. Okay, so when he says that, the Kikuyus are the driving force of the Kenyan economy, that's a very dangerous statement to make. Now, you can play dumb and say, oh, you know what? He has the right to say that. And there's actually truth to that. Because on the surface level, if you actually look at the most successful business people, I'm not saying all of them, but majority of the business people who are successful in Kenya, the millionaires, the billionaires, okay, they happen to be from the Kikuyu tribe. I'm not saying it's just limited to Kikuyus only are the ones who are doing well economically or in business, but I'm saying, you know, a lot of successful businessmen and women happen to be in Kikuyus. Now, some may trace it back to, you know, the era, Kenyatta era, saying that when Kenyatta came in, you know, he stole the land and he told the Kikuyus, Ibeni, Sishikwe, and that's why JM Kariuki came out and said, opposed Kenyatta, saying, hey, listen, this whole idea of stealing land, this land that's supposed to be for all Kenyans and giving it to your friends, you know, sharing it with Kikuyu oligarchs, will come back and bite us. So some people might say that, okay, this wealth by these business people from Mount Kenya stem from that era. But I'm saying, to be fair, the reality is majority of people from Mount Kenya people are entrepreneurs, okay? They're very good business people. They are brave. They go to every part of the country and they start businesses and they're all about their money. That's a fact. There's nothing wrong, okay? Actually, there's nothing there's nothing offensive about that. But what I would like to reiterate here, the danger in someone, okay, the danger of someone of Rigathi Gachagua's stature stating what he stated is that him being somebody who's supposed to be a public figure who speaks in the interest of all Kenyans, as someone who is a former deputy president, but stirring up this evil pot of tribalism by actually making it about the Kikuyu nation, making it about the Mount Kenya people, saying that they're the only ones who are actually successful businessmen and women, and that Kenya cannot conduct its business or develop economically without them. That's a very dangerous statement. And like I said, if this is not countered by level-headed members of Mount Kenya to counter what this guy is saying, then we might find ourselves in a very bad place, because the more we see he's getting more attention from his community while he keeps on saying things that do not bode well with the rest of the country, it will develop to something that we saw post 2007, 2008 elections. You think I'm kidding? Keep on watching. Look at the general ethos, the mood, okay, the zeitgeist, political temperature, political atmosphere in Kenya, okay? The political class are heavily invested in this tribal division, political tribal division. That's their only way of survival, and they're doing everything to stir up this pot. In fact, they are going as far as preparing for a possible civil strife, possible civil war, possible political violence that might be occurring in the future. Given the fact, if you listen to that young man, I keep on forgetting his name, the guy that actually brought to our attention to the Adani deals, okay? I forgot his name. He's based in France somewhere else. He's a, you know, political refugee, whatever you want to call him, okay? Okay? He posted that next week he will be revealing names of people from the Rift Valley region, politicians and business people, okay, the so-called leaders from there, who have been stockpiling, okay, weapons that they probably got from the RSF, UAE, and other parts of the world stockpiling these weapons in preparation for a possible civil war coming 2027 or even before that. So that's a clear indication that these guys are prepared for some bloodshed. Now, listen to me very carefully. Something very interesting that I actually came across when I was listening to the ex IBC commissioner. I think his name is Oswago. I forgot his first name. Go to my ex timeline, go down there. You can see a snippet that I actually retweeted from somebody else. This Oswago guy gave us the rundown. He was part of the IBC, I think, back in 2008 or something like that. But basically, he mentioned how the government rigs the elections in their favor. Okay? When I say the government, I'm talking about the person in power, how they method they use to win elections. And he gave an example of 1992, when Moi knew that he wasn't doing well, the numbers were not looking good, he was going to lose, given the fact that we had Matiba and Kibaki, and they were really challenging him, the Ford and, Ford Kenya, whatever the case is, okay? And he mentioned that one of the methods that Moi regime used to deter people from voting was political violence. That's why we had incidences like the one that we heard about in Molo. Do you remember what happened in Molo? Surprise, surprise. Guess who had a hand in that mess? Okay? Rigathi Gachagua. Okay? So, what I'm telling you, violence as a means to deter voter turnout or to disenfranchise the voters, okay, is a common method that has always been used by the regime in place. Okay, that's why you wonder why Kenya is relatively peaceful until elections time. Okay, of course we know that violence is not just limited to presidential election results or whatever the case is. We've seen what happened in Kasipul. We've seen what happens in different constituency where MPs are fighting to death for these electoral results and the lawsuits thereafter, okay? So it's not just limited, but I'm just saying that the fact that there's intelligence, okay, briefings of intelligence, let me just say that there are Rift Valley top businessmen, leaders, and politicians who are involved in buying and stockpiling weapons, both from whether it's Rwanda, RSF, and other places, Southern Sudan, whatever the case is, wherever they're getting it from, UAE, whatever the case, Israel, whatever. The fact that these guys are getting these weapons, it shows that they're expecting a confrontation, a violent confrontation in 2027. Having a clear understanding that there's a possibility that they might lose these elections, and not only losing, they will not cede power. And one good method that always works for them is what? Violence. I've mentioned numerous times here in this channel that, the reason why they always opt for violence is because they try to get your consent through violence. How does that work? Election comes through. We know Ruto loses the elections, okay? Because overwhelmingly people do not want him anymore. Okay, right? But he cooks up the books, cooks up the ballots, the results at the IBC, whether it's in the Neo level or whatever the case is, because Bomas, listen, the presidential elections are supposed to be determined at the polling station, okay? But the person to declare the final results, it will be at the what? At Bomas, by the IBC chairperson, okay? That's the constitutionally mandated individual to do so, who's supposed to declare who won the presidential election, as per the constitution. So guess what? No matter how many this will be the most. I mean, these guys have been telling you openly that they are going to steal these elections. We had the lady from Wajir. We had Oscar Sudi say it. We had numerous individuals from UDA and Mount Kenya politicians saying that they will. Kama ijatosha wataongeza. So why are you expecting something different? You see what I'm saying? But like as I was explaining, this is how they usually get your consent into this whole idea of what Raila is fighting for. A change in the constitution, not through a referendum, but through violence in order to get your consent. And again, I will explain it for the umpteenth time. We go to the elections. We know the sitting president is unpopular and is definitely going to lose. Like we saw in 2007, like we saw in 2017. Okay? We go to the polls. Ruto loses. IBC cooks up the books. The IBC chairperson comes out and say, let me tell you something very quickly before I go on. Since cases, my attack has been crazy. Like I couldn't even come to the internet. Like I am getting, like I told you about the hacking and all that stuff. So they have ramped up their efforts to like try to whatever. By the way, for anyone who knows the itinerary of Matiangi, Rigathi Gachagua, or Martha Karua in the US, please let me know on the chat, or you can reach out to me on my X pages. I want to go and go to be part of that whatever town hall meeting or whatever they're addressing Kenyans in the diaspora. I want to speak to them. I want to air my views. But anyway, back to the point. Back to the point that I'm making, ladies and gentlemen, brothers and sisters, friends and comrades. Take your time, like, share, comment, and do all the good stuff. And if you want the link, I can bring you the link so you can talk about it, okay? So anyway, like I said, this is how these lunatics, these political conmen and women are getting your consent. I've explained it. I'll explain it one more time before the glitch happened, okay? Before my internet was rudely interrupted, okay? These guys use violence to do what? To get your consent. Now you see they're building up an atmosphere for crisis, for the next crisis. The crisis in Kenya, the most common way to create a crisis is always through tribal political tension. I've repeated this, I've said it numerous times, okay? But again, for the sake of the viewers who haven't seen this, I will say it one more time. So you can see, if you look at on Rigathi's end, who is the so-called opposition, who is part of this political class, who is pretending to have this beef with Ruto, he's on the other side pretending to be the opposition. Oh, I was unconstitutionally kicked out of government. I'm the deputy president. Ruto is coming out attacking the Kikuyus, because the whole point is he knows that the most effective way to mess with people's emotions in Kenya, especially when it comes to politics, you have to politicize this through ethnicity, okay? You have to ethnicize the problem. Politicize this problem through ethnicity. So instead of Gachagua just saying, hey, listen, these guys unconstitutionally impeached me from my position as the deputy president of Kenya, he is making it as we Kikuyus were kicked out of government because Ruto is a what? A tribalist, okay? That way, it ropes in all the Kikuyus and also heighten political and ethnic tensions between the Kikuyu community and any other tribe that is aligned to Ruto's regime. You understand? So by default, of course, Kikuyus will not be liking the Luos, because the Luos, led by ODM and Raila Odinga, have joined Ruto's government, of this blood-based government, or whatever the case is. So by default, these guys are already going to be at odds. And given the historical political difference, tension that Luos have with Kikuyus from the time of Tom Mboya's death and all that stuff, or Uko's death and all that, we know the history. So it plays into the hand of these political elites, okay? That's why you see this guy is so brazenly saying outrageous things, and nobody seems to arrest him, okay? He keeps on saying it day in, day out. He's just saying, like I told you when I started the beginning of this stream, I mentioned and highlighted what Gachagua said when he said that Kikuyus are the most successful, they are the driving force in Kenyan economy, and without them, you cannot have an economy in Kenya. Basically, it's a way of actually, to get other tribes, especially the ones aligned to Ruto's regime, to hate the Kikuyus. That's the whole point, because the whole point is to do what? To create a crisis, okay, that will lead to a civil strife, tension, and possibly violence. As I've explained that, this guy is going to release names of Rift Valley leaders, politicians who have been buying ammunition, stockpiling arms from Sudan and elsewhere else, in contemplation, waiting, knowing that this thing might descend into a tribal, ethnic violence, whether it's in 2027 or before that, okay? And the whole reason for this is to get your consent, because as I usually explain, once civil unrest, civil, ethnic, political violence commence, what will be the cry from all the people, whether it's from the clergymen to whatever the case is? Everyone will be saying, you know what, it's better for us to sit down and talk, dialogue, conclave, intergenerational bullshit that Raila is talking about, than having our young men and women having their houses torched, having their kids killed, burnt in churches, killing each other, whatever the case is. It's better for us to sit down and dialogue. And that's how they will get unanimous support, overwhelming support by or consent from the people to agree, to consent to this idea of having to change the constitution that will not address the very problems that got them there, but will be to create position for these warlords that actually engineered this political ethnic violence. That's the perfect storm, crisis that they needed in order to change the constitution. See what I'm saying? That's why Rigathi Gachagua is continuing with his vitriolic nonsense, tribal bullshit that he's continuing. And guess what? There's a very good possibility that if these guys come back to Kenya, they might try to arrest him to heighten the tensions again, okay? Listen carefully to what the reply that Oscar Sudi gave after Gachagua said what he said in was it in Boston, whatever the case is, when he said, okay, Kikuyus are the driving force of the Kenyan economy. Of course, Oscar Sudi is, the mouthpiece for Ruto, the attack dog for Ruto. And he came out and said what he said. Of course, he called Wamunyoro everything under the sun. Then he wrapped it up by saying, say what you're saying, we'll be waiting for you. Sisi tuko hapa Kenya, tunakungoja urudi. What was he insinuating? He's basically saying they're going to wait for him to come back, and once he comes back, he'll be arrested. The arrest will be not something to be worried about. This arrest will be only, again, it is going to be used to raise Rigathi Gachagua's not only his stature, but to heighten the political division, ethnic tension between the so-called perceived opposition, which is basically these tribal cocoons led by this tribal chieftain involved in the past pogroms that happened, bedeviled Kenya. Okay? If you look at Matiangi, he has blood in his hands. If you look at Gachagua, he has blood in his hands. If you look at Martha Karua, he has blood in his hands. If you look at the other side, Ruto, we know about Kiamba Church and so forth, so forth. If you look at Uhuru Kenyatta, we already know what happened in Naivasha, Nakuru, Nyalenda. We know that. If you look at Raila Odinga, even though he wants to play this guy who's always back in the scene, we know this guy always, he starts shit, then he hides back, he throws rock and hides behind, the Rutos and the Uhurus, okay? Okay, so both sides who actually happen to be part of this one club, they know how to engineer a fake political difference between the two factions. They create this problem, okay? Exacerbate the situation by roping in, playing with the emotions of the population by ethnicizing the political difference that we have, making it about, oh, it is our turn to eat. All those Kikuyu think that, oh, they're the businessmen, they run this economy. Oh, they think this is that. And on the other side, they're saying, oh, it's our turn to eat. They don't like the fact that we Luos now are in a government. Oh, we are like this. Oh, we're this. Then before you know it, we are descending and we are having a civil war. And once this war starts, now the useful idiots like the Herman Manoras and the useless clergymen that you see go to State House every day will be screaming from the rooftops, begging for a sit down, a dialogue, a conclave, intergenerational bullshit that Raila Odinga has been calling for. And they will say, if it means, if it takes the changing or the amending of the Constitution for us to have peace, let it be. And they shall send the American ambassador, the UK High Commissioner, and all these colonial masters with their emissaries landing in Kenya. Of course, now I hear that the UN headquarters is being moved. They're moving their offices from New York to Nairobi, Kenya. Isn't that interesting? Okay? So it will be easy work for them. And they shall meet somewhere in KICC or Bomas with their air-conditioned offices, having 1 million budget to discuss this nonsense, and they shall draft a raft of bullshit proposals that basically will offer positions for these warlords, these tribal chieftains, who have been planning this all along with the blessing of their colonial masters. And they shall tell you, having a prime ministerial position will be beneficial to the country having peace, because it will be what? Inclusivity, as Opio and I once told us, that pinhead that is growing fat by the minute. Go look at his pictures. That's what I'm saying, ladies and gentlemen. So do not be moved or shaken, or do not let your emotion, don't get riled up when you hear Gachagua make these outrageous statements. These people are doing so, okay, deliberately, because it is part of the script. And they're working also another angle with the Gen Zs, because you see, that's where Boniface Mwangi comes in. You might be sitting there thinking, hey, Boniface Mwangi was arrested by DCI, poor thing. Listen, that guy went to the DCI to plan how the next Mandamano shall go down, okay? Like I told you, this Gen Z movement has been infiltrated to the core. I hate to break it down, but this Gen Z movement, in my opinion, and I might be wrong, you might correct me at the comment section, okay? I think it has been infiltrated, okay, reduced to a tribal outfit, as they have diagnosed it as a Kikuyu uprising, a few youth from Kikuyu who are dissatisfied with what's happening in Kenya. That's what they've reduced it to, okay? And they've infiltrated it by using the ODM folks and other people who are paid by the government, okay, to go in there, infiltrate the movement so it's not successful, break it from within, find out who are the people who are influencing this movement, okay? Get the goons, use the police force, okay? That's how they're infiltrating this movement, to a point where it's not effective. Now, I'm not saying that this movement, this Gen Z movement, is dead. That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying in the fight, propaganda fight, information warfare, okay? We know the propaganda from the government. We know the truth or the plans that this Gen Z, the talks that they're having online, okay? But if we are to scale the two on the balance of things in the propaganda war that's happening between the Gen Zs and the government, okay, and the success rate, I think the government has an upper hand so far, because given the fact that people are buying into the Gachaguas, buying into this whole narrative that the Kikuyus are under attack, and they're giving time to this lunatic like Matiangi, okay, that shows me that we are losing ground, and the protest by Gen Zs should be more aggressive, not only against Ruto, but against this political class like Matiangi, the Martha Karuas, the Kalonzo Musyokas, okay? This should be made clear. There should be a clear distinction. That's why I told you guys, do not be paying attention to this one-term nonsense, this cousins nonsense, this half-term, whatever the case. This is a bunch of baloney. Don't fall into it. I like what Francis Gaito said in his tweet. He said, in the last Mandamano, the infiltrators, majority of them, probably supporters of Gachagua, were the ones screaming one term that actually blew the cover for the Gen Zs when they were trying to make their way through the Kiambu Road and to CBD. Omuganda, I see you. Karibu sana. Ani na kuona pia. Karibu sana. Nice seeing you guys. Don't usininyime your like. You know the first order of business. You see what I'm saying? That's why I kept on telling you, do not fall into this funny hashtag. One term, all this crap. The only hashtag that should be in place is Occupy State House 2025. Ruto must go. Not only Ruto, but the whole political class. Ruto akishuka mpaka ashuke na kila mtu. He has to go with Rigathi Gachagua. He has to go with Raila Odinga. He has to go with Martha Karua. He has to go with Kalonzo Musyoka. He has to go with Matiangi. He has to go with Wamalo. He has to go with Natembeya. He has to go with all these rotten apples that have been in the headlines in our Kenyan politics. We have to stand strong. That's why I've always been advocating for these young folks to stand up and challenge the nonsense by Gachagua, because this guy is making inroads. He's playing a dangerous game. It's not dangerous to Ruto. Ruto can care less about what Gachagua does because this is a whole play with them. It is dangerous to majority of Kenyans because they are getting roped in. I say Kenyan democracy say don't fear Vita is part of growth. Well, I'm not scared of Vita, but if it can be avoided, I would like to avoid it because I know what Vita means, what comes with civil war, and it's not fun. I mean, if we hadn't learned from Congo, what's happening in Congo right now, I mean, we are forgetting the kind of atrocities that happen in war. It's not fun. Yes, it's part of growth, but it's not fun. This is not like we are going to punch each other. Then after we fight, we have a friendly fight, we shake hands and say, okay, I'm glad you won the fight, tuende nyumbani. No. I still remember the women that were giving testimonies. Listen to me. This is how evil human can be. When those people at Rift Valley were running away, okay, and it's not their fault. They probably didn't even vote for Kibaki. They sought refuge in the only place that they know they can be safe, which is the house of the Lord, the church. These killers went in and set the church on fire. That's not even the worst part of it. The worst part of it is this. When a child, listen to me, and maybe it hits different when you have a child. I do have one. That's why it hits different. When a child, the heat was so much and the smoke was so much, and they were attempting to leave the church because they were like, I would rather be killed outside, hacked to death by these monsters than sit in that smoky, flaming house, church. When they were attempting to run away because the parents just gave up and they were like, okay, we are dying without child. Some kids attempted to run away from the church. These monsters, because these are not humans, these are demonically possessed individuals who had hate for another community, picked up these kids, caught them, and threw them back to the flames. You want to go that way? You want to go to war? That's what war does. I'm sorry, I do not want that. I don't care if you are not politically aligned to my position. I don't care if you don't speak the same language as me. I don't care if we are not in the same tribe. On you or your kids. So if we start talking the way Ruto, Raila, Uhuru, and Gachagua is talking, I know where it can lead to. And it doesn't take much to get us there. That's why, my dearest friends, Kenyan democracy, you should stand up and challenge this lunatic called Gachagua from saying what he's saying. I understand. Yes, we have successful business people from the Kikuyu tribe. That is a fact. But I'm sorry, they're not the only ones who are driving the economy of Kenya. We should make that clear. Okay? But we do not want to go that path where we start feeling like we are better than other tribes. That's where we lose the plot. That is exactly where we lose the plot. Once you start saying, we're the most successful ones, we're the driving force of this economy, without us, this country cannot move. That's where we lose the plot. You understand what I'm saying? And that's what I'm saying. So you can entertain what he's saying and you can, hey, by all means, support him if you want to. It's democracy. But understand the implications of what this man is saying. They're not as innocent. Remember, this guy was involved in that Molo stuff in 1992. But anyway, let me read your comments since you guys have been yapping here. We have postponed this thing for a long. It's either Vita or nothing. I think that's what Gen Z are proving. You can't change Kenya without Vita. That's simple. China fought in 1949, Christmas party in it. We will not get it on a silver plate. Okay. And I respectfully disagree with you. I know it's been postponed, yes. But guess what? It can be averted. That's my point. It can be averted because the people who are actually driving for this civil war in Kenya, they will not be there when this vita ikianza, they will not be there. They won't be there. Raila will get into his chopper and go to Sudan, Southern Sudan, or go to wherever. Uhuru has a driveway, not a driveway, he has an runway in his backyard. And he has a private jet. Mambo Kenya ikishika moto ataingia kwa ndege naenda. Ruto will get into his private jet or in his son's mood matatu and head to Southern Sudan or wherever, Uganda or Congo, whatever the case is, whoever is willing to take him. Okay? Matiangi, I heard, is a US citizen. Atarudi Baltimore, whatever the case is. He'll continue with his job at World Bank. Martha Karua ataenda UAE. Hassan Joho atarudi Yemen. Guess who will be fighting? Jimmy Wanjigi is a billionaire. He'll go to United Arab Emirates and stay there. I think he has apartments there, or whatever the case. How do you avert it when Kenya's wealth is owned by 5% of population? I think you're talking about two things. If you mean the 5% of the population, the 5% of the wealth, okay, the majority of the wealth is controlled by 5% of the population. What I'm saying is this: if we are going to confront this so-called political class, the corrupt political oligarchs, okay, we can't do it by buying into their narrative of tribal, ethnicized political violence, because that is what they want. That is the last card they have to play in order to survive, because Gen Zs have exposed them. How do you read this? How do you read it? Let me highlight this. This video. Um, Hold on. How do you redistribute Kenyan wealth at that rate if you create employment with this holding? Provides. Hold on, let me highlight this again. Because anyway, just to how do you redistribute Kenyan wealth at that rate? You can't create employment with this holding. What I'm saying is this, ladies and gentlemen, brothers and sisters, Kenyan democracy. The constitution, how the country's, the national wealth should be redistributed equally in all oligarchs that started in 1963, okay? If you read your constitution, Kenyan democracy, all these issues are addressed in the constitution. That's why I usually tell you guys the number one problem in Kenya is that there's no law enforcement. The constitution is not implemented because they know it provides an equitable society. That's why it is, because number one, we don't even vote them in. The only president that was actually voted in was Kibaki in 2002. From there on, we've never elected these leaders. I mean, just if we, all right, let's wealth, whatever, this 5% of the population, how did they amass this wealth? Number one is through the loans that they acquire, that are supposed to be actually helping with the infrastructural challenges we have in order to have an industrialized economy. Okay? But if you're not building industries by the loans that you acquire, and majority of these loans are acquired illegally without our consent, okay? And they go to private banks of these 5% of the population that you are referring to, where comes the problem? The problem is the lack of implementation of the constitution, because the constitution is very clear as to the process of how you should acquire this loan, how you should create this budget, how it should be used, okay? And how we should develop our nation. these so-called representatives, who we've donated this power to, have violated this constitution. And instead of us demanding for this implementation, full implementation of this constitution, and holding accountable these folks who have robbed us, we clap at them. Okay? That's the problem. And they use their propaganda machine through the mainstream media to, again, propagate the same nonsense by creating this ethnicized political tension that we find ourselves in, instead of actually paying attention to the root cause of the Kenyan problem, which is what? The lack of the implementation of the law. The constitution is there. The laws in place are there, but nobody is following it. There's no separation of power. The legislative body is an appendage of the executive branch. The executive branch have usurped power from the judiciary and the rest of the Ninio. You understand what I'm saying? So that's the problem. That's why the Gen Zs was simply saying, hey, follow the constitution. Because that is the social contract that we agreed upon as a people, for the people, by the people. But Ruto said no. Same thing with Uhuru Kenyatta. Same thing with Kibaki in his second term. Same thing with Moi in 24 years. Same thing with Uhuru's dad, Kenyatta. What is his name? Jomo. But they present the problem as, oh, ni wale Wajaluo, ni wale Wakikuyu, ni wale Waluya, ni wale Look, just listen to what they're saying. Go pay attention to what Nani is saying. What Ruto, Gachagua, and all these idiots that are running for president. They're not addressing anything. They're not addressing anything. Makelele yao ni one time, sisi Wakikuyu, watu wa Mlima tutashikana na watu wa Kamba na nani Matiangi wa Kisii. On the other side watasema, oh, sisi tutashikana na North Eastern, sisi tutashikana na sijui Wajaluo. Nothing. I like this. Keri Kayaga, do you NSI guys have nothing better to do on a Tuesday afternoon, so you come? Hi, Deep Navy, I'm nice. I see. Hi, Anya Natuambia, it's rumored that 2025, have we come back from that by talking? Remove the name of, please. The problem is, listen, the problem is not the Kikuyu community. I'll tell you right now. So that's exactly what if you think the problem is the Kikuyu people, you are living in La La Land, my friend. I'm sorry. The problem is not the Kikuyus. The problem is not the Luos. The problem is not any tribe. Okay, these problems are brought about by individuals that refuse to follow the constitution and steal money from our public coffers, make themselves rich, then they start to maintain their stolen loot. It has nothing to do with your tribe. Okay, so yeah. What time do you want me to come back, Deep Navy? I'll come back. I'll come back in the evening because I kind of have a semi-emergency, so I have to leave it right here. Yeah, enter stream 10. What time works for you, Deep Navy? In like how many hours? Give me an hour's type. because I don't know, maybe you're in a different part of the world. Um, 5 or 6 hours, I'll be back for another session, and I'll be bringing people in so we can have a chit chat on what's happening as we follow what's developing in Kenya. Anyway, do me a favor, guys. Like, share, subscribe, comment, do all the good stuff, and put your notification button on so when I come in, you'll find me here. I'm Namnagan. Nice seeing you guys. Deep Navy, thank you so much for joining. Annie, thank you so much. Deep Navy, as I said. Erika Yaga, the NIS agent. Annie, kama kawaida. Nice seeing you. Omuganda Katende from Kampala. Nice seeing you, my brother from another country. Much respect. Shi Mariam and others, and also all of you who have been on the background watching quietly and not commenting. I'll see you guys later. Peace and blessings. I'll see you in the Badai. Okay? In 5 or 6 hours, I'll be back. I'll have another live so we can have a chat. And I'll bring you guys in the studio so we can have this discussion. Thank you so much. I'll talk to you guys later. Peace and blessings. I'm out.